The news came across the stars like a cold wind. Every major broadcast in the galaxy showed the same image, a burning human colony drifting in the black. The alien anchor's voice was slow and heavy, telling the story of loss. They spoke of death. They spoke of tragedy. They said Earth would mourn. In the high halls of the Andraxis Empire, leaders nodded in agreement. In the floating palaces of the Vorex Syndicate, merchants raised glasses, certain that human expansion was over. In quiet cafes on distant moons, traders shook their heads, saying it was sad but inevitable.
The galaxy
Believed the same thing, that humanity would lower its head, cry, and fade into the background of history. But far away, hidden in the shadow of a frozen asteroid, a different truth was unfolding. Inside a dark command chamber, Admiral Cade stood in front of a wide holodisplay. The burning image of the colony was still there, flickering in blue light. He watched it without moving, without blinking. His officers waited in silence. Room smelled faintly of oil and steel, the air thick with the hum of unseen machines. For a long time no one spoke. Then Cade turned, his voice calm but sharp, like a blade drawn in the dark. "Wake the fleets." The order fell into the silence, like a stone into deep water. The officers glanced at one another, but no one questioned him. Fingers moved across control panels. Quiet alarms rang through the hidden base. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the asteroid's ice, massive doors began to open. Shipyards that had slept for years came alive. Rows of black warships, their hulls hidden under layers of rock and ice, powered up one by one. The engines glowed faint red, like coals under ash. No signal escaped the base. No transmission betrayed their awakening. The galaxy did not know that humanity had been preparing for this moment for a long time, 2 years ago. Human ships began to vanish from trade lanes. Merchant convoys were no longer seen in alien ports. Most races believed the humans had retreated to their home systems, too weak to compete in the harsh markets of the stars. That was the story people told each other. The truth was buried in shadows. Humanity had gone silent to build something the galaxy had never seen. A fleet not for defense, not for patrols, but for war. Hundreds of ships, each armed beyond the limits of any treaty. They were forged in secret shipyards, scattered through asteroid fields, dark gas clouds, and forgotten moons. Every piece of technology was tuned for one purpose: to strike back in the command chamber. Admiral Kite's second-in-command, Commander Rain, stepped closer. "Sir, the enemy believes we are broken. They won't expect this." Cade didn't take his eyes off the map. Stars glowed there, each one marked with silent meaning. "They expect tears," he said. "They will get fire." Beyond the asteroid's shell, the fleet continued to wake. Crew members moved quickly through narrow halls, checking weapons and systems. Long-range cannons hummed as their capacitors charged. Fighters rolled out of hidden bays, their sleek frames catching the cold light of distant suns. Every sound inside the ships was a quiet promise one made to the dead of the burned colony far from the fleet. On a small desert moon, an alien news team prepared another broadcast. They wanted to show footage of human mourners in Earth's capital. They wanted to capture the grief, to display it for the galaxy as proof of the Andraxis victory. But their cameras never found such a scene. Earth's cities were calm. The spaceports were busy. People worked, traded, trained. The silence was not grief. It was something else. On the edge of the Sol system, a lone cargo ship drifted past a relay station. Inside the ship's hold were rows of sealed containers, each one holding weapons banned in half the galaxy. Pilot, a scarred old spacer, glanced at the dark horizon and muttered to himself, "They think we're done. Poor fools." Back in the hidden base, a deep vibration rolled through the command deck. One of the massive warships, the TSS Vengeance, pulled free from its cradle. It turned slowly, its black hull reflecting no light. One after another, more ships followed, silent predators leaving their lair. Cade stood at the window now, watching the ships rise. His face was still unreadable, but his eyes burned with something old and unshakable. He knew that the Andraxis had made their move not just to destroy a colony, but to send a message. They wanted to show humanity's limits. They wanted to make humans fear them. Instead, they had lit a fire that would spread across the stars. Outside, the Armada began to form a wall of steel in the cold darkness. Their engines flared once, twice, and then fell into formation. They didn't need to announce themselves. The time came, the galaxy would hear them loud enough. Commander Rain stepped beside Cade. "Where will we strike first?" Cade's gaze stayed on the black horizon, where they least expect, where it will hurt most. "And when we leave, they will know humanity does not mourn. Humanity sails." In the silence that followed, the first ships vanished into hyperspace. Their trails were faint, like whispers on the wind. But the storm was coming, and somewhere, deep in the heart of the Andraxis Empire, someone would soon feel the first drop of rain, and when it fell, it would not stop. The trade lanes had grown quiet where human ships once passed. Merchants from other species traveled the old routes and found only empty space. Silent stations, and the occasional wreck drifting like a ghost. To most of the galaxy, this was proof that humanity had truly withdrawn, licking its wounds somewhere deep in its home systems. But those who knew how to listen could sense something else: a tension in the air. A shadow moving behind the stars, in the far reaches of uncharted space. Lieutenant Mara Voss sat in the pilot's chair of a small stealth frigate named the Whisper. The hull around her was blacker than the void, coated in a material that bent light and scattered scans. The ship barely made a sound as it drifted between jagged chunks of asteroid rock. Her fingers rested lightly on the controls, every movement precise. She wasn't just flying. She was hunting. The Whisper had been sent ahead of the Armada to confirm rumors, whispers of a prison convoy moving near the destroyed colony's sector. The mission was simple: find it, track it, and call in reinforcements if possible. Get! Mara knew missions never stayed simple. Beside her, the ship's AI spoke in a calm, low voice. Thermal signatures detected 30,000 kilometers ahead, matching known Andraxis transport class. Escorts minimal. Mara's eyes narrowed. Minimal meant confidence. The Andraxis thought no one would dare strike so deep into their claimed space. She pushed the frigate forward, hugging the shadow of a tumbling asteroid. Slowly, the target came into view: a massive gray transport, its engines glowing faintly, dragging a string of smaller ships behind it. Even from this distance, Mara could see faint force fields sealing the sides of the transport. Inside, she guessed, would be rows of cells. She tapped the CUM. Voss to command. "I have eyes on a prison transport. Minimal escort to light patrol." Craft Admiral Cade's voice came back through the static. "Engage at your discretion. Bring our people home." Mara's lips curved in a thin smile, acknowledged. The Whisper glided closer, silent and invisible. Then, with a sudden burst of power, Mara brought the ship above the convoy's path. Turrets unfolded from the frigate's sides, charging quietly. She pressed the trigger in the darkness. A line of burning light ripped through the first patrol ship, shattered without even sending a distress call. The second ship tried to bank away, but a missile from the Whisper tore through its midsection. Scattering fragments into the void, the transport began to turn, its shields flaring to life. Mara fired again, targeting the engines. Sparks and plasma erupted, slowing the massive vessel to a crawl. She engaged the docking clamps and drifted toward its side. The boarding team moved fast, 6 armored Marines in black suits, weapons ready. Inside, the corridors were narrow and cold, the lights dim. Alien guards, caught off guard, barely raised their weapons before the Marines cut them down. At the far end of the ship, they found the cells. Dozens of humans stared back through the bars, faces pale, eyes hollow. The Marines unlocked the gates, and the survivors stumbled out. Some were too weak to walk, supported by their rescuers. One man, older than the rest, caught Mara's arm as she passed. His voice was a rasp. "It wasn't just war," he said. "They're looking for something." Mara froze. "What?" Man shook his head. They didn't destroy the colony to win a battle. They destroyed it to cover what they found there. Something ancient. Something dangerous. Before she could ask more, the ship's shuttered long-range sensors blared warnings. Mourn and Drax's ships were closing fast. Mara keyed her come. All teams, back to the Whisper. We're leaving. The Marines moved quickly, carrying the wounded. Mara sealed the airlock and pulled the frigate away from the dying transport. Engines flared as they dove into the asteroid field, weaving through the rocks until the enemy's signals faded. When the Whisper finally entered hyperspace, Mara sat. Back in her chair, replaying the prisoner's words, something ancient, something dangerous far away. Admiral Cade stood over the star map in the command chamber, unaware of the exact details, but he could feel it. The war was no longer just about vengeance. There was another layer to it, something hidden beneath. The ashes of the destroyed colony, and if the Andraxis wanted it badly enough to start a war, then humanity would make sure they were not the ones to find it. The Whisper returned to the hidden base with the rescued prisoners, their faces pale but their eyes alive again. Admiral Cade stood on the docking platform as they disembarked, his gaze sharp and unblinking. Mara Voss approached, saluting before. Speaking, they weren't just taking prisoners, she said. They were looking for something. Survivors believe it was buried under the colony before it was destroyed. Cade's jaw tightened. Do they know what it is? No, Mara replied. Only that the Andraxis were desperate to keep. It's secret. Cade didn't answer immediately. His eyes moved past Mara, to the distant line of black warships waiting in the shadow of the asteroid field. Then we make them desperate in other ways. If they're searching for this thing, we'll make sure they're too busy fighting us to look for it. Within hours, the Armada's first operation was set in motion. The target, an Andraxis fuel depot on the edge of their core systems. Hitting it would cripple several sectors and force their fleets to pull back. The warships moved out silently, each one slipping into hyperspace without broadcasting a trace. The Vengeance led the way, its heavy armor and massive cannons built for breaking enemy lines. Mara's Whisper was there too, darting among the shadows of the bigger ships, ready to scout ahead. They emerged from hyperspace in the shadow of a dead moon. Beyond it, the fuel depot floated a sprawling ring of metal around a small, glowing gas giant. Dozens of fuel tanks hung in clusters, each one the size of a city block. A handful of patrol cruisers orbited lazily, their patterns slow, almost careless. Target locked, reported Commander Raindot. Cade gave a single nod. All ships strike hard, strike fast. The void lit up. Human railguns fired in silent flashes, their projectiles slamming into the depot's outer defenses. Explosions rippled across the structure. Patrol cruisers spun in confusion, scrambling to raise shields, but the Armada was already among them. The Vengeance punched through the ring, its heavy guns tearing holes in the metal like paper. The Whisper weaved between enemy ships, planting explosives along fuel lines. In seconds, a chain reaction began. One tank after another went up in massive bursts of light. Scattering molten debris into the black dot, an Andraxis command ship tried to rally its forces, broadcasting orders across the system. Cade's flagship targeted it, unleashing a volley of plasma torpedoes. The ship vanished in a bloom of white fire. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, the fuel depot was nothing but twisted wreckage drifting around the gas giant. Human ships regrouped in perfect formation, their hulls untouched compared to the burning remains of the enemy. Cade opened a wideband transmission not to the Andraxis, but to every listening post in the region. This is Admiral Cade of the Terran Armada. You came to take our future. You thought we would mourn. Instead, we sail. The message echoed across the sector, carried by every relay, whispered in every port. The galaxy, once certain humanity was broken, now began to speak of them in a different way. In the Andraxis High Council chamber, the news was received in silence. The loss of the depot was bad enough, but the fact that humans had struck so deep, so cleanly, without warning, that was worse. Orders were given to increase patrols, to track down the human fleet. But there was fear in their voices now, a fear they couldn't hide. Back aboard the Vengeance, Cade stood at the bridge window, watching debris spin slowly past. Mara joined him. First blow landed, she said quietly. Not the last, Cade replied. They'll come after us now. That's what we want. She glanced at him. So they'll be too busy to find the thing under the colony. Cade didn't look at her, so we can find it first. Outside. The Armada turned toward its next target, engines burning against the cold dark. The war had truly begun. Years before the burning of the colony. Before the secret Armada slept beneath ice and rock, the galaxy had first met humanity in a far quieter moment. It happened on the rim of Andraxis-controlled space. In a small, unremarkable star system, single human exploration vessel, the Pathfinder, had been mapping asteroid belts when an Andraxis patrol arrived. At the time, the Andraxis Empire ruled hundreds of worlds. They were used to meeting young species proud for a time, and humbled by the cold mathematics of galactic politics. The Pathfinder was small, unarmed, and completely alone. Its captain, Elias Corrin, opened hailing channels immediately, speaking in a language the Andraxis could barely translate. He offered greetings, data, trade. The Andraxis commander studied him with the detached interest of a predator that had no need to rush. The meeting was polite, even cordial. The Andraxis sent a single ship to Earth to begin diplomatic contact. They found humans strange, short-lived, fast-moving, endlessly curious. Within a few decades, humanity was trading openly with dozens of alien races, building colonies beyond its home system. But behind the polite exchanges, the Andraxis quietly measured Earth's strength, noted that humans lacked the vast fleets of older empires, that their weapons were primitive compared to the armories of the core worlds. They concluded, as many others had before, that humans were no threat. The mistake was not in underestimating human firepower, it was in misunderstanding human nature. When humans lost a trading deal, they didn't simply withdraw. They found another route. When storms destroyed their colonies, they rebuilt stronger. When pirates raided their ships, they adapted faster than the pirates could. The Andraxis observed this with mild irritation, but still did not consider it dangerous. That belief began to change after the Tarnus incident. A small Andraxis cruiser had fired on a human science station, killing 30 civilians. Instead of formal protests and drawn-out negotiations, humanity responded within days. A group of private merchant ships, armed only with improvised weapons, tracked the cruiser into a nebula and boarded it. They took back every stolen item, rescued their surviving crew, and left the Andraxis ship adrift without power. The event shocked the Empire, not because of the damage, it was minor compared to other conflicts, but because it proved something no one had expected. Humans didn't wait for permission to defend themselves. From then on, Andraxis policy shifted quietly. They became more careful with human trade lanes, more cautious about direct conflict. But the underlying arrogance remained. They believed that, if it came to a true war, humanity could be crushed in a single decisive strike. That arrogance was still there. When they discovered the anomaly beneath the colony on Ventar 4, it had been a routine resource, survey until their scans detected something buried deep under the planet's crust. The readings were unlike any known technology. The Andraxis scientists believed it was an ancient artifact, possibly older than the Empire itself. They also believed the humans would never understand its value. So instead of negotiating, they made a decision: erase the colony, take the artifact, and leave no witnesses. What they did not know, what they could not imagine, was that the destruction of Ventara 4 would not break humanity. It would unite them. Back in the present, Admiral, Cade stood over a holographic projection of the colony's ruins. The image shimmered underground tunnels, collapsed chambers, and something deep beneath it all that the scans could not fully reveal. Mara Voss stepped onto the bridge, her expression grim. The survivors said the Andraxis called it the relic. They didn't know what it did, but whatever it is, they were willing to start a war over it. Cade's voice was quiet, almost cold, and we find it before they do. Outside the viewport, the Armada drifted in silent formation, each ship a blade waiting to be drawn. The Andraxis thought they understood humanity, but they had only seen the surface. Beneath it, like the relic under the colony, there was something deeper, something the galaxy was about to learn the hard way. The raids began like sparks in the dark small, quick and scattered. An Andraxis supply ship vanished on the edge of a nebula. A patrol outpost reported unidentified contacts, then fell silent before reinforcements could arrive. A convoy, carrying rare metals from the core worlds, was found drifting. Its escort ships disabled, and its cargo holds empty. No one saw the attackers. No one could trace their path. In the alien ports, whispers began to spread. They called them the Terran Ghost Fleet ships that struck from nowhere, leaving nothing behind but wreckage. Some claimed they had cloaking devices far beyond current technology. Others swore the humans were using stolen alien drives. No one knew the truth, because the Ghost Fleet never stayed long enough to be caught. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Cade watched the latest strike report. The Armada had hit 4 targets in 2 days, each in a different sector. It was deliberate, calculated chaos. The Andraxis couldn't protect their borders if they didn't know where the next blow would fall. Commander, Rain stood beside him. They're pulling ships from the Ventara 4 region to protect their supply lines. Cade gave a short nod. Good. The less they have guarding that system, the sooner we can move in. Mara Voss's whisper had been everywhere in the past weeks, lipping into enemy space, marking targets for the fleet, and sometimes striking on her own. She had begun to notice a pattern in the Andraxis response. They're panicking. She reported over the comms. They're scattering their forces instead of grouping them. The more we hit, the more they spread themselves thin. Cade's eyes narrowed. Keep pushing. We want them chasing shadows until they forget why this war started. The next target was an Andraxis weapons platform in orbit around a barren world. The platform's guns were meant to guard the trade lanes, but that night they fired only once before the Armada's cannons silenced them. In less than an hour, the platform was in human hands, its weapon systems dismantled and loaded onto cargo ships. In the Andraxis High Council chamber, the news was met with disbelief. Reports came in faster than the Council could read them: raids on depots, the loss of patrol fleets, supply shortages in the outer colonies. For the first time in centuries, the Andraxis military was forced into a defensive posture. A younger council member asked the question. None of them wanted to voice. If they can do this much now, what happens when they find the relic?
Number
one answered. Back aboard the Vengeance, Cade stood at the viewport, watching the stars slide past as the Armada prepared to jump again. He knew the raids could not last forever. Eventually, the Andraxis would recover, regroup, and strike back with overwhelming force. But every day they spent reacting was another day for humanity to move closer to Ventara 4. Next target, Cade ordered. Rain hesitated. Sir, some of our captains are asking how far we intend to push before we make our move on the relic. Cade's voice was steady. We push until the Andraxis are too afraid to follow us. In the shadows of deep space, the Ghost Fleet vanished into hyperspace once more. The war was no longer a rumor. It was a storm, and humanity was steering it straight toward, the heart of the enemy. The trap was set long before the Armada arrived. It began with a message encrypted urgent, carrying the personal seal of Captain Raylos, an alien smuggler who had worked with humanity since the first whispers of war. Raylos claimed to have information on the relic's exact location. Would meet them in the Red Hollow system, a lawless sector far from Andraxis patrols. Admiral Cade weighed the risk, but decided the lead was too important to ignore. The fleet jumped in 3 waves, with the Vengeance and Mara Voss's whisper arriving first. The Red Hollow system was as dead as its name promised. A star burned faint and red at the center, its light barely reaching the skeletal remains of old mining stations. Cade's voice carried calmly across the comms. Maintain formation. Scan for any movement. Then a single ship appeared on long-range sensors, Realis's freighter. It drifted toward them, shields down, weapons cold. Mara's voice came over the channel. Something's wrong. No escort, no warning beacons. This isn't how Raylos works. Before Cade could respond, The stars around them seemed to shift. Dozens of Andrax's warships uncloaked at once, their weapons already charged. Ambush. Rain shouted. The first salvo tore through one of the smaller human frigates, splitting it in two. The enemy pressed in from all sides, cutting off escape vectors. Cade's voice was hard as steel. All ships return fire and break their line. Mara, cover the flank. The void lit up in a storm of railgun rounds, plasma bolts, and missile trails. The Armada fought like wolves, but the Andraxis had prepared well. Every human strike was met with heavier fire, every retreat blocked. Mara's whisper danced between enemy ships, taking out to patrol craft before a glancing hit scorched her port engines. She gritted her teeth, forcing the ship to keep moving. I can hold for now, but they're trying to box us in. On the Vengeance, alarms blared. Shields dropped to 40%, then 30%. A plasma blast rocked the bridge, throwing officers to the deck. Cade gripped the railing, eyes fixed on the tactical display. Signal all ships rally on my position. We're punching through their weakest. Point Sector 7. The concentrated push worked, but at a cost. Another human destroyer went down, taking its crew with it. The Armada broke free of the encirclement, jumping into hyperspace with the enemy close behind. When the surviving ships regrouped in deep space, the mood was grim. Hulls were scarred, crews were exhausted, and the fleet had lost good people in the medbay of the Vengeance. Cade stood over Captain Relos, who had been found aboard his own freighter dying from wounds inflicted before the battle even began. His voice was a broken whisper. "I didn't betray you," Relos said. They took me, made me send the message." Cade leaned closer. "Why? What did they want with the relic?" Relos's eyes clouded. "They say, if you find it first, you'll doom us all." His hand went still. Cade left the medbay without a word. On the bridge, Mara was waiting. "Sir, if the Andraxis are that desperate to keep us away from the relic, they'll try again," Cade finished for her. "And next time, they won't fail." Outside the viewport, the Armada drifted in silence. The victory streak was broken. The enemy now knew the humans were hunting the Relicond. They would stop at nothing to win the race. The Armada emerged from hyperspace on the edge of the Ventara system, engines burning low to keep their arrival hidden. The planet lay ahead, a cold, lifeless sphere wrapped in clouds of dust from the destruction 2 months before. Orbital debris. Fields drifted silently, the remains of defense platforms and civilian stations. Even from this distance, it looked like a graveyard. Admiral Cade stood on the Vengeance's bridge, eyes fixed on the planet. "Deploy the recon teams." "I want eyes." On the surface within the hour, Mara Voss and her crew took the Whisper into low orbit, weaving between the wreckage. From above, the colony's ruins were a black scar across the land craters where cities had been. Shattered roads and twisted metal glinting faintly under the pale sunlight. The recon drones descended first, scanning the ground. Almost immediately, they began picking up strange readings, not radiation, not power signals, but something else. "Sir, Mara," reported Overcomes. "There's a massive structure under the surface, 2 kilometers down. It's generating. I don't even know how to describe this. Sensors can't map it. They just bend." Cade's response was immediate. "Prepare a landing team." He sat down near the largest crater. The ground was soft with ash and littered with fragments of shattered buildings. The air was thin and dry, the silence broken only by the crunch of boots on rubble. The entrance to the underground structure was half buried beneath collapsed stone and metal. Clearing it took hours, but when they finally broke through a tunnel, stretched ahead, walls made not of steel, but of some dark, smooth material that shimmered faintly. Inside, the air was colder. The faint hum of unseen machinery vibrated in their bones. The deeper they went, the stranger the place became. The walls curved unnaturally, as though grown rather than built. Symbols glowed faintly under their lights patterns, unlike any language known to the galaxy, at the tunnel's end. They stepped into a vast chamber. In the center stood a towering construct, its surface a shifting mix of metal and crystal. Energy pulsed slowly within, like the heartbeat of something sleeping around its base. Machinery hummed in rhythms too precise to be random. Mara stared up at it. What is this thing? One of the tech officers stepped forward, scanning. His voice was unsteady. It's not just a machine. It's a stellar engine. The power here could ignite a dead star, collapse a living one into nothing. The words hung in the air like ice. Cade moved closer, running his hand along the strange surface. It was warm, alive in some way. This is why they burned the colony, he said quietly. They didn't want anyone to know this existed. Mara's eyes narrowed. So what do we do? Destroy it. Take it. Cade didn't answer immediately. His mind was already racing, thinking of how such a thing could end a war before it even began, or burn half the galaxy in the process. Before he could speak, the comms crackled. Admiral enemy ships inbound. Multiple signatures. They know. We're here. Cade turned sharply. All teams back to the ships. We're not ready to fight them down here. As they retreated through the tunnels, the faint hum of the relic seemed to grow louder, as if it could sense their departure. Or perhaps it was just their imagination. When the Vengeance pulled away from the planet, the Andraxis fleet was already dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. Cade ordered the Armada into defensive formation, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The relic was real. It was powerful. And now both sides knew exactly where it was. The Andraxis fleet advanced into the Ventara system like a black tide, their ships filling the void with cold, hard light. On the Vengeance's bridge, Admiral Cade stood tall, watching them close the distance. Every officer on the deck felt the tension. This was no skirmish, no raid. This was the final line before open. Total war. The relic's image floated in the holodisplay beside him, its crystal heart pulsing like a slow drumbeat. The scientists had confirmed what the tech officer had guessed planetside. It was a stellar engine capable of shaping suns or erasing them. Whoever controlled it would hold a weapon greater than any fleet. Cade opened a private channel to the Armada captains. His voice was steady. We didn't build this fleet to hide. We built it because they thought they could break us. Today, we show them what happens when humanity refuses to kneel. Commander Rain stepped closer. Sir, if we stay here and fight, we risk losing everything. If we run, they take the relic. Dade's gaze hardened. We don't run, we sail. Orders went out across the Armada. The Whisper and 2 escort frigates broke away, diving toward the planet to secure the relic's chamber. The rest of the fleet turned to meet the Andraxis head-on. The void erupted. Railguns fired in staccato bursts, tearing through enemy shields. Plasma torpedoes streaked like falling stars. The Andraxis answered with beams of searing light that carved through the dark, slamming into human armor. Ships died on both sides, but the Armada refused to break formation. On the planet's surface, Maravos's team reached the relic chamber. Explosions from the battle above trembled through the walls, but the construct stood untouched, its pulsing. Light growing brighter. Charges set, a Marine reported. Mara hesitated, looking at the strange, living crystal. This thing could win the war in one move. Rackham crackled with Cade's voice. Mara, we can't let them have it. Not now, not ever. Do it. She swallowed hard, then triggered the detonator. The charges lit the chamber in white fire. The relic's pulse quickened, then flared blindingly. For a heartbeat, the planet seemed to glow from within. Above, in the thick of battle, every ship's sensors screamed as the relic's energy surged. Then, without warning, the pulse shot outward an invisible wave that tore through the Andraxis fleet. Their ships faltered, engines failing, weapons going dark. Cade seized the moment. All ships advance. The Armada drove forward like a spear, smashing through the crippled enemy lines. One after another, Andraxis ships fell silent or erupted into flame. When it was over, the void was littered with the wreckage of the once proud Andraxis fleet. The relic was gone, its chamber reduced to molten stone. But its final act had given humanity the opening it needed. Cade stood at the bridge window. the debris field drifting slowly past. The war wasn't finished, not by a long way, but the galaxy had seen what humanity could do. He opened a wideband transmission to every system within range. His voice was calm, resolute. You came for our mourning. Yes. You leave with our war. We are humanity, and we sail for victory. Across 100 worlds, beings of every race heard the words. Some listened in fear, others in awe, but all knew the same truth. Humanity would not be erased. And somewhere, deep in the black, the Armada turned toward its next horizon, its ships burning bright against the endless dark.